Hey, everybody. Welcome. And meet Craig Blundell behind the drums on tour with Mr. Steve Hackett. Check this out. We'll be right with you with Craig. And remember to turn it up, folks. Turn it up! Okay, that's all you get for now, folks. We're going to show more of Craig's solo and a little surprise after that in just a bit. Welcome to Drum Talk TV. Tell us where you're watching from. I'm in Globe, Arizona. Where is that? I live here and I don't even know. Oh, no, we're about 100 miles east of Phoenix up in the mountains. Steven Shinder, my co-host today, as we're simulcasting on our other show, Yesshift, as well as in Bakersfield, California. Don't ask why he's there. And Craig Blundell is in London. Craig, fresh off the tour on a short break. Thanks for taking time to join us. How are you?
I'm very well, Dan. Firstly, what an absolute pleasure and a privilege it is to be on Drum Talk TV. I've been a fan forever, and what you guys do for the drumming community is second to none. So it's an absolute honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. I appreciate it. I want to give everybody your proper introduction. This is one of the very few times I'm using notes, folks. If you watch the show, you know I don't use notes or prepare. But Craig has such an interesting, vast background that I want to make sure everybody knows about your musical acumen, as it were, and your pedigree. So check this out, folks. From 2015 to 2021, Craig tracked and programmed well over 100 different projects and played on over 50 albums, including 6 UK top albums. They don't count because they're UK, but whatever. From Stephen Wilson to Steve Hackett, and contributed drums and programmed for game soundtracks to TV and movies, including BBC comedy Toast of Tinseltown. Craig has the full backing and support of Sennheiser, Neumann, Roland and Focusrite. He also composes for TV, radio, online magazines, websites, and many clients, including the BBC. You can't say the BBC without saying it like the BBC, because after all, it's the BBC. And the gadget show Jaguar, TalkSport, KPMG, Coca-Cola, Shell, and many others. And he started performing with Steve Hackett and the Genesis Revisited tour show in 2019. What I love about this so far, other than you're playing and that you're a great guy, Craig, is that you're a drummer who is a musician. I know that sounds weird. I mean, all drummers, technically, I guess, are musicians, but you're a drummer who writes music, you understand music theory, you program, you compose. Let's start with that. Is drums your first instrument? Did you also learn piano, trumpet, kazoo, accordion? Like, what's the deal? And would you agree that maybe a lot of drummers sit in just that pocket so that they don't have to bother learning bass clef, treble clef, scales, and circle of fifths and all of that? What's your take on that?
That's a great question. I mean, firstly, I am a drummer first. It's my love. It's still something I'm deeply passionate about, and continue to push my art as much as I possibly can. And I'm in a deeply privileged position that I get to play with some of these absolute stalwarts of the progressive scene. And I guess I'm known or growing reputation-wise in the more progressive scene. But I didn't turn pro till later in life. I turned pro like 3 or 4 times and couldn't make it pay, couldn't pay the bills as a lot of pros don't seem to talk about. And very early on, I worked in a school as a teacher and still playing and gigging and stuff. And I learned very early on it's really important to have like what we call a portfolio career. So don't just give the phone one opportunity to ring. Like for me, prog, I'm very lucky that mainly it's progressive stuff, my love, but the phone rings for TV commercials and a lot of programming and a bit of jazz, a bit of hip hop. And I thought, well, why should I just stop it at just learning like a monotone style? Why shouldn't I learn bass and guitar and piano? And I was watching all of these guys that I'd go to work with programming this music, and I'd play along to it. I'm like, I want to do that. And, when I started doing clinics for Roland and Mapex and Peisty back in the day, I was playing covers, and it's like, I can be better than that. I should be better and then to compose my own stuff. So I literally just set about learning and learning and learning, and I still learn. And I won't say I'm the master at any of it by far, but I really enjoy the fact that I'm on tour, and if I have a little bit of time off or some downtime, I can program, I can work. I travel with a mini studio around the globe, which is really important for me, and it's good for the head as well, rather than just literally from bed to stage and from stage to bed all the time. You can fill the day with other creativity outlets, and it keeps it fresh. And thankfully, touch wood, the phone still rings, which I'm very privileged about and very thankful for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. And I want to remind our viewers and folks, when I look over here, I'm not watching the Flintstones. I'm actually watching our show. Chime in and let us know where you're watching from. We'll give shout outs, and let us know if you have questions for Craig. We'll field those. We'll get back to some drumming and some gear questions, but I know Steven has some questions about your career as well. Steve, why don't you take it?
For sure.
Right. Well, first up, one thing I want to ask was, because, we're always curious about people's influences. And, me and my dad, we love talking about Yes. So one of the things that we were wondering is if Yes was one of your influences, and what
Absolutely.
Other influence. Oh, really?
Without shadow of a doubt. My dad, God rest him. Well, I was in, actually the house I'm in now, I'm up with my mom, and I grew up in this house, and literally I would wake up in a bedroom, listen to Supertramp, King Crimson, Yes, Toto, all of these bands that my dad was heavily influenced by back in the day. And I used to go and deliver papers around this street. And I used to, on my old Walkman, just listen to Yes. And I'd listen to King Crimson. And then I went down to the spotty mullet-wearing teenager listening to like Iron Maiden and Slayer, and went down the metal route. I could never really play it as a kid, but went down that route. But I was very, very lucky that the bands, certainly my influences as a kid, or my dad's influences, were very drummer-centric. And it was purely by chance. My dad wasn't a drummer. There wasn't music in the family, but he listened to bands where rhythm was an integral part. He knew more about Bill Bruford and all those guys back in the day before he knew I was going to even be a drummer. So
Interesting.
It was kind of bittersweet. I would listen to all of his vinyl collection, and going back 30, 40 years now and looking at it, it's still some of my favorite albums, and it's just like, what a gift, I was so fortunate. And there was a very good friend of the family's, used to play in a band called the Swinging Blue Jeans back in the day. They were a big Mersey beat, like the Beatles, lower key, but they had a hit called the Hippie Hippie Shake. So they were a pretty big deal back in the day. And he used to come and drink beers in the garden with my dad when he got back off tour, but he'd bring me sticks and cymbals and broken drum heads, and me as a 3 or 4 year old bam just hitting stuff, and that was it. That I was set on my path, and that was pretty much my path marked out, and I was never going to be anything special academically. I knew that was always going to be my path, which it took a while, but I'm so happy I did. I've never been happier playing music. What a gift it is.
Yeah, and like they say, in anything in life, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And you've had quite a journey just reading that introduction. With your influences that you mentioned, were there specific eras or albums or songs by King Crimson and Yes that are more influential on you than others?
Crimson-wise, I was very, very, very fortunate. I listened to Lark's Tongue, and I got to play with David Cross, the violinist. It was my very first pro gig, actually. I was still working a day job, and in 2007 he spotted me and was desperate for a drummer for tour. And of course I knew who he was. It's like, as a Crimson fan, and we got to play all of that old stuff. Still to this day, just like one of the. He was massive, and still is, in Italy. Italians love their prog, and they, as you know, we've just come back with Mr. Hackett, and they really put on an amazing prog thing. Their knowledge is quite staggering. But I guess, listening to like Red and Schizoid Man and Starless, and then get to play that stuff. It was that real you got to pinch yourself feeling, especially when I had like 3 or 4 goes at turning pro and it failing every time because I didn't have any contacts and I didn't want to play pop music and I just wanted to play music that basically there'd be no queue in the ladies' toilets, So that's the music I love to play, where it's just full of men with beards stroking beards, like an extreme tennis match looking at people's parts, It's the music that fascinates me. I've never gone for the more pop-orientated stuff. It doesn't really interest me. I like thinking music. And thankfully, my dad put me on that path. But yeah, those like classic albums, to get to play those things is just a remarkable feeling, It's something that I'll never forget.
Culturally, you touched on something that is close to my heart that has to do with why I didn't continue my career as a touring and recording and performing musician, because this is the late 70s into the mid 80s in America, where prog basically evaporated. And the last real band that I was in was a prog band, and we were playing up and down the Sunset Strip with bands like Motley Crue, Quiet Riot, Great White, Dokken, Warrant, bands like that. And here we were playing a mix between Gentle Giant, Frank Zappa, and Supertramp. We were and there were no record deals for us. There was an evaporating audience for us because, just like you said, Craig, we didn't want to play just the 3-chord thing. It was either at that time, it was splintering off into 2 things. You were going to either wear spandex and put your head upside down and spray the hair, or you're going to wear a skinny tie buttoned all the way to the top because of the new wave movement. And we were nowhere in either camp. So I kind of missed the boat by not being flexible and saying, I'm just going to work and get, we were snobby. We wanted to play music that you'd hurt yourself trying to dance to. Like
Absolutely.
maybe part of Supper's Ready.
Absolutely.
And so I can totally relate to that. Whereas in Europe, and you mentioned how big David Cross still is in Italy and places like Netherlands and different parts of Europe, prog is still a huge thing. It's come back in a way in the US, but it's modernized and different. And I'm not saying that's less or watered down, but it's just different than the 70s prog we were trying to make it with back then. It's an interesting
absolutely
thing,
it really has, and with like Hackett and the Yes guys and there's not that many of the traditionalists still around, so there's still, I think it's really interesting. Some of the shows you'd see like 3rd generation of families at the shows and knowing the words, and it's like that's fills you with hope that people are listening to great music and not being switching on the TV and being polluted with all the nonsense that's on there. I get everyone's got to pay the bills and I respect that, but regarding great music, obviously it's always in the eye of the beholder, but to listen to great music and to look out and see a younger generation, that's great. It's so great to see.
Yeah, Steve, how old were you at the first Yes concert? That was with Yes in Asia, correct?
Yeah, I was, so this would have been summer of 2009, so I would have been 14, almost 15.
And that's funny, I forgot, my first concert was at 14. Craig, you probably never heard of them, though. They were a flash in the pan band out of England that somehow got some dates in the US called Led Zeppelin.
Oh, they'll never make it. It's a horrible name.
That was my moment. Like for guys a bit older than I, it was seeing the Beatles on TV, the Ed Sullivan Show. For me, wanting to be the next Jacques Cousteau, an oceanographer, and I had already been playing since I was 7. My dad took me to see Zepp in LA at 14, and by the 3rd song, I thought, you mean that could be a job? And I decided I didn't want to be a scientist anymore. I wanted to be a drummer, and here we are.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, I want to give some shout outs before Steve continues with a couple of the questions. Lots of people watching, big fans of Craig here. We've got Malk Edwards says, hi, Craig, great to see you. Chris Elliott, same. Kevin Mooney, good afternoon from sunny Scotland, gentlemen. Good afternoon, sir. Per Ronstad, hello from Sweden. Stephen, Craig, and Dan, thank you so much. And I'm going to take a shot at the names. Silke Dekram in Germany. Hello. I have a Drum Talk TV partner in Munich. Our fan, Brian Cahoon, almost knocked the studio over. Brian Cahoon, welcome. Marcel Schmeck. Awesome. A lot of people just chiming in. Great. Steve, you go next.
Yeah, and I'd also like to give a shout out over on Yesshift. Craig Santos says in sunny Cambridgeshire, UK. And Craig actually has a question for Craig. Says, what aspect of your playing are you currently focused on improving?
Oh, that's a great question.
It's a great question. I think it's there's all the stereotype answers. Is like, I'm going to practice my rudiments. Blah, blah, blah. I'm currently working on my sound. That is what I'm working on. I've gone back on how I strike the drums. I gone back. If I put an album that I played on, I want it to sound like me. And what is me? What is my sound? What is my tuning? What is my voice? Because you can get 10 bass players that will play the same lick, and you'll know which one Jacko is. Yes. And you'll get Gavin Harris, my great Gavin, or Simon Phillips, that you'll know. They could all play the same pop. That's Gavin. His tuning's there, or his precision's there. That's Simon. That's it. So I've done so much time on my playing over the years, and the whole 10,000 hours myth, or whatever you think of that. I continue to practice on a gig. I mean, the show's 3 hours long, and we've been out since last September. So, and it's been a brutal tour. I'm fatigued, but I'm actually really enjoying my playing. I mean, I'm enjoying the difference. I went to a concert tom rig for this tour, and I'm enjoying the difference that gives me. I'm enjoying that. But I think if I was to name maybe 3 things I'd be working on, it would be to sound better. To sound better, to put a desk tape on and go, wow, you are really in command of the drum set. I'm simplifying things, and I love that phrase, simplify or simple to complex. I'm making things simpler, which sound better. Which rather than you see, like, all you got to do is log onto Instagram and look at all a million people playing chops. You're never going to play that on an album or play it on tour without getting told off or fired. So I'm really into the fact that it's progressive music. You can bring out these crazy ideas, simplify them, and they sound better. I love the originality in that. And B, I'm working on my anxiety and my nerves. I suffer with horrendous stage fright. Always have done. And I've always had imposter syndrome. With all the gigs that have gone before me, and the people, when I got the Stephen Wilson tour, which was life-changing for me, I took over from Marco Minnemann, obviously playing some of Gavin Harrison's parts, some Marco parts. And then that was talking about defining a sound and deep end, that was unbelievable, like a real thing. Now I'm working on basically sitting up straight and working on my posture, being in command of the drum set, and that's something I'll never conquer, but it's something that I want to be in control of. I get to play in front of hundreds of thousands of people every year, and I'm very privileged that I played on some albums by my heroes. I want to be better at that. I have no desire to go and show off all my chops, and that doesn't interest me. What I want to do is have an album that I played on that I want to be proud of forever, that I can say, right, here's 60 albums. I only really like 3 or 4 of them that I sound on. I want to sound better. I want to tune better. I want to hit the drums more efficiently. And staying healthy. Staying healthy is very, very important when you're on the road and you're doing so many shows. And I look after myself, so staying as healthy as possible, and having a career which I still want to diverse, because there's no end goal. I don't particularly want to be touring for the rest of my life, but I want to do other things. I really want to help others, and I'm at foremost an educator rather than I am a performer. I get much more of a kick out of helping people than I do going playing on a stage. That scares the crap out of me. So, but everyone's a work in progress. I think if you're a human being and you don't make mistakes, or you don't think, I've nailed that, that's it, I'm going to rest on my laurels, and kind of got it
that's
wrong.
the death of it all right there.
I'm into all.
Yeah. Great question. Thanks, Craig, for the question for Craig. And on that note, I love that you're experimenting and you're trying new things. I have only ever had a concert tom kit, and I still do. That big blue kit is still no bottom heads, no front bass drum head, and I love that sound. Back in my day, back in my day, Phil Collins was all concert tom. Back then, Carl Palmer was all concert tom. Back then, Neil Peart was mostly concert tom, and a lot of my other big influences. And I just love that big open sound. I do have a small 4-piece jazz kit that it has reso heads on everything. But I love getting on my big kit and having that. Not just that it's voluminous, because I love working with dynamics, but I love that it has tone and it's musical. Craig, you've seen guys and girls get on kits where the heads are so muted and subdued that they might be on a 5 or 7 piece kit and they're going around and every drum sounds like thud. There's no, like, you can hardly recognize the tuning. I'm the opposite of that. The other thing I love that you mentioned is experimenting with your posture. When I interview, I've had Todd Sucherman on a few times from Styx.
Oh, Todd's a dear friend of mine. He's amazing.
Isn't he? And, you know, he does the interviews from his studio at home. And I've always wondered and always forgot to ask him on the last interview. I asked him, what is up with your snare drum being up to your chin? Basically, I'm exaggerating, but and he explained, you know, he plays traditional grip, so it allows him to just bring from the elbow straight down. And I don't play that much traditional grip. I do when I play like big band swing or something, but I'm mostly playing match grip. But I thought, that's interesting. I lowered my seat maybe only 3 inches, and I felt more like I was wearing the kit rather than approaching it from outside. And it just made such a difference. It really did. So
I love that.
Yeah, I think people really need to take time to move stuff around and do something crazy you've never done. Put your ride in the middle and just move shit around differently.
Oh, and absolutely. When you look at the Bruford setups over the years, and you know,
every setup.
I got to know Bill, and he's a gentleman, and he's got time for everybody. But you look at some of those setups. You look at Carl Palmer, some of those setups. Obviously, Neil, God rest him. I mean, you look at that, essentially based off a 4-piece and then everything else around, but never really stretching it past the elbows, never. And then for me, Todd is the king of that. And I always say with people like, go and watch Todd, go and speak to Todd, go and just watch him play. There's your education. You don't need Insta gospel chops. Just go and watch Todd. That's a lesson in art right there. Or sit behind Gavin or Simon Phillips. All of that is art. And it's ergonomically, like when I decided that, because I've only ever played small drums, you know, when I was on the Hank Nutter Race tour, it was 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, I think, with an 18 gong. I've got to have a gong. It's prog, so I have to have a gong.
I love
it's
that.
The law, right? So when I was speccing the kit for the Steve Hackett Seconds Out tour, I'm like, Seconds Out, classic. You know, you've got 2 iconic drummers there, 2 iconic drummers. You know, you're thinking, right, Chester, Phil, at the time, slaying it. Concert tom rig. So I spoke to my friends at Mapex. I'm like, guys, would you do something for me? Would you recreate that rig for me? But like a distant cousin. So they were like, right, what do you want? I'm like, 8 through 18. So like, all right, do it. So this thing arrived and we set it up, and I've always had 8, 10, 12. So to have 12, 13, 14, I set them up, they were like here, and I'm like, what the hell is this about? So I'm like, right, I need to start moving stuff around, because this basically looks like I'm playing Pluto to Saturn to Mars to Venus, all of these massive planet-sized drums. So I started moving things around, and then I found by moving things around, I was striking differently. I wasn't going through the head. I was playing the drum. I was playing it, and my hands felt softer. My grip was super soft, like 4 fingers in front of the thumbs. I had space here, and I just found myself on this tour more than ever being the most comfortable by getting a completely dialed in setup.
With that, did you experiment with the tilt and angle of the drums, or did that just come automatic for you?
I experiment obviously with the 13s and the 14s, which is just, I found myself playing down the drum, which give it a completely different tone of attack. Yeah. So I get a softer, rounded tone. I'd hit the outer of the heads, and the heads didn't like it because it was a 2-ply head on a concert tom rig. It wasn't, the overtones were horrible. So I knew fairly early on I have to be striking the drum in the middle to get the fat tone. So the drums went a little bit flatter. I got a little bit higher, and the drums came slightly higher. Gibraltar made this amazing system for me where everything could be flown a little bit higher, and everything, like literally from gong drum to 18 to 14 flown rack, my elbows were only ever like there, you know, nothing was out of line. So I would sit, and this sounds really probably a bit hippie, but I felt like I can compose music here. I can literally take snares off, and I've got all of these tones at my disposal, rather than sonically doing that and going clockwise 8 through 8. I've got all of this tone that my hands can go any direction, and I feel like I could actually make music. Like I've never been a big one for drum solos, and on this show, it's massive. It's basically a drum solo written around music, isn't it, for the most part?
Yeah,
but,
and that's funny because I was just gonna show your kit that you're using on the tour and show some of your drum solo, and then we'll come back with some more career questions that Steve has for you, and then we'll geek out on actual drumming some more. So, folks, this is from the current tour. And dig some of this. I'm going to skip ahead a touch, see if we can get to where some of Craig's backup band is here. There we go. And for those of you who don't know, we're having Craig's guitarist, Steve Hackett, on tomorrow at the same time. I love the setup, and I was going to mention that I've seen your other setup with the double bass drum and the more toms and everything, and I see that you went to a more economized setup, yet it's still you in the music, which is great. Yeah. And another example of finding your voice, and no matter what you're playing on, you're still you. You know, no matter what that spectrum is that you're playing, from dubstep to Los Endos, you know, it's basically the same to a degree when it's coming from in here and your toolbox.
Absolutely, and I think that's one. If I was to give like one of 3 lessons to a drummer, it was, you know, it's the lesson that I learned the hard way, is that don't be a poor imitation of anyone else. Be the best you, and don't spend all your life on Insta copying chops and copying stuff that really doesn't matter. Spend that time working on you. So when you do get a gig, because everyone will get a call at some point if you put yourself out there and put yourself in that light. When you do get it, they go, you sound great, not like you sound like a poor, or yours not as good as.
Right.
It's the most important thing.
Or it sounds like you're trying to be fill in the blank.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh man, I had that. You know, I've gone on record so many times in magazines and said this as being a poor imitation of, and I was. So, you know, that's, 7-8 years on now. I want to be the best me, and it's such a cliche, isn't it? But, you know, I listened back to some of those albums I played in back in the day, and I'm like, man, if only. But that's okay.
But it's part of how you got to where you are now with your own
100%.
sound. It's just part of that journey.
100%.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
100%.
Yeah, I think Steve has more career questions from a couple other projects you've been on.
Sure.
Right. So one of the other projects you've been on for years, well, you were with them for a while, and then you came back recently, is a band called Frost. And I actually listened to the album you were on, Falling Satellites, and I really loved the heavy sound that it had. There was a moment that reminded me of the dubstep genre, and for a little bit I was like, I'm not really sure about this, but as it kept going, like, you know, the album won me over, and I just ended up loving it overall. So I was wondering if there are any future plans for Frost at the moment.
Yes, there is. Firstly, it was great. I couldn't keep up with their commitments. I was on tour with Stephen Wilson, and the guys, The three other guys wanted. I mean, they're all virtuosos. Jem, he played for the G3 guitar. He was one of the MDs or pianists. I think he stood in for Mike Keneally, I think, at the time. He's a monster. He's an absolute monster, and he's done great. John Mitchell does Lonely Robot, and he's the vocalist in It Bites. And Nathan, the bass player in Level 42, and the guitarist in Level 42, and bass player in it. They're all monsters. They're all absolute monsters. I was so fortunate to get the call back in the day and join the guys. I mean, they don't do a lot of work, but when they do, they have this amazing cult following of people that fly in from all over and watch them. We have a tour in December, and I'm supposed to be out with Mr. Hackett because of certain things. An element of the Canada tour got cancelled, so they've rescheduled, but I'd already committed to join my bandmates in Frost. So the great Nick DiVigilio is covering for me with Hackett, which is amazing, absolutely amazing, which is great. But Frost, we're going to go out and we're going to do 5 or 6 shows. I am super excited about it because it's the one thing that really tests me, like really, really tests me. Not just in the realms of playing wise, there's just so much tech on the gig, and I'm triggering, and there's layering, and there's sampling, and you're also being the kind of like uber tech guy. Everyone's got some serious tech on that gig, and they're all absolute monsters on and off the stage. So yes, I'm going back out with Frost. I'm delighted to have rejoined them again, and they are.
Where will you be touring? Will you be coming to America at all, and the West Coast-ish area?
There's an opportunity that they're looking at some dates further afield next year. That's all I really know at this moment. I'm sure the opportunity will arise for them to come out. And they have an amazing following all over the world, but they've always been like this cult underground band that they're all incredible. I mean, they're incredible. What their albums, like Falling Satellites is a great album. If you listen to Million Town in the UK and Europe, it's one of the more iconic albums.
Oh, wow.
It's well worth a listen. It's insane. It's really, 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 really good. But
Nice.
But thank you for bringing up that. They're good friends of mine, and I've got to be fit and I have my chops together for that one for sure. It's no notes get left unplayed on that gig. I can tell you that much. It's a beast.
That's great. And there's a comment here on the Drum Talk TV page from Silke Deckham that says, still waiting for a live concert of Frost and Lonely Robot in Germany. So there you go. You got people waiting for it.
Yeah, for sure. There is a demand, but you know what it's like, Dan. You speak to Jeff Downs, all those guys all the time about touring. Touring's changed now. I'm very, very privileged with Hackett. We do it at a pretty high level. At this thing, just to put a full-piece band in a bus and on a gig is really difficult nowadays. Touring has become really, really, really hard. When people say, come and play Mexico, come and play Chile, come and play, they don't realize it's going to cost 30, 40 grand before you even get there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it used to be. And obviously with Brexit in the UK and European laws, it makes it a little bit more tricky. And so it's not as easy as it used to be, like, let's go and do a tour like the old days, like Boys on a Bus.
Yeah.
It's not that easy anymore.
It's not as glamorous either. I mean, there's some really big artists they're gigging, and then they're getting to bed at 1 or 2 in the morning, and then they gotta leave for the airport at 5 in the morning, and that like you said about taking care of yourself, that could be brutal.
Yeah, it sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, it's the fatigue element. I mean, it's I've noticed, especially we're not walking on streets that are paved with gold here. You used to do a gig, have a couple of days off, have a travel day, have a day off. They are few and far between now. When an agent books shows, he's got 13 mouths to feed in a hotel room with fuel and vans running on days off, it's not like the heyday. It's been like that for a long time now, but it's getting harder. And I'm lucky with Steve. He has an amazing team behind it that do it very, very well. Yeah. But basically, I won't say at a grassroots level, but I know some of my friends that are in fairly known bands that actually cannot think about going across the channel to go into Europe and do a gig because it's financially not possible. They're going to lose it, and they're having to take a gamble, like printing off a load of merch just to make a zero balance on the way back. You know, so it's tough. It's really, really tough for those bands. You know, hopefully it'll change. Hopefully cost of living will come down, and ridiculous fees for freight. I mean, freight costs for now for getting your gear around the world has tripled, quadrupled. Like, and we've just done New Zealand, Japan, Australia, home, Italy, and that's a lot of freight. You know, it's cost. I can't tell you how much more. It's not easy anymore, but we do try. We all try. It's what we love doing, so we all try and make. I mean, I must admit, after the COVID, just going out and sitting on a drum stool and seeing people in an audience, literally, the one thing I've noticed this time around, playing to some audiences all over the world, everyone is having the best time.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the world's gone to ruins, hasn't it? Basically, without being a Debbie Downer, the world's gone to ruins. So to go to concerts and get music again, we feel it on stage. How you know people are loving it, and long may that continue.
That Styx concert my wife and I went to in Phoenix about 3 weeks ago was the first public thing we'd ever been to since COVID started. So almost 2.5 years, or two years and a couple months, whatever it is. And the charge of energy with the audience and with the band, it was really amazing. It's definitely a different world, and being able to get out and see bands play and play live maybe means more now than it ever has because of that. You know, no one expected it to last so long, and you know, people with lockdown, which used to just be a prison term, from what I understand. I won't tell you why. You know, now people can get out and see live music, even at a local pub. It's a big deal because they couldn't do that for 2 years. You know, bands didn't even record together for 2 years. They were just working at their rigs at home and slapping it all together. So it's great to hear someone like you talk about, you know, how purposeful
it is. Great. And from a musician's perspective as well, and somebody that's sat there looking out, it's so great to see these people. I mean, some people take risks, you know, you see people in mass that are clearly uncomfortable, but you see the volume that these people are coming out, and it means the world to these bands because it means they can do it. That's, you know, that's it, you know, to have the support and see you wearing a t-shirt and coming back again and leaving a nice review. There's no better feeling right now. You know, it's amazing, and long may that continue.
Yeah, that's great. Steve has a question about a particular TV show that you two have in common, and then I want to geek out on drumming again.
Right. So one of the TV shows that I'm really into, and of course,
really into. Let's not understate it.
Yeah, I mean, I even listened to the audio dramas, but anyway, I saw, you know, looking through your credits, I saw that you contributed to Matt Berry's album Television Themes on a reworked version of the Doctor Who theme song. So I was curious, like, what was that like? Were you a fan of Doctor Who? And if so, do you have like a favorite doctor?
Right. Okay. I would have to say Tom Baker.
Ooh, classic.
Yeah, left field. Yeah, I know. I mean, Doctor Who is always in my house. In Britain, it's an institution. You know, it is just an institution. And I don't know if you know Matt Berry at all. Matt's an actor that's doing extremely well now. I do a lot of stuff with Matt, and he's like this synth geek. He's really good friends with Jean-Michel Jarre, Oxygen, all that sort of stuff. So he's really good friends with him, and he's got this unbelievable collection of synths. So we were kind of not neighbors, but we were close. He invited me over and like, I'm doing some TV themes, and we've been given the go-ahead to redo the Doctor Who theme tune. I'm like, you're kidding me. So it's like, okay. And it was no joke, not just me or anything. I went over, he's like, he played it. And I was like, what do you want? Some sort of 6/8 shuffle on the floor, Tom? Let's put some towels on the floor, Tom. Let's put towels on everything. Let's do it. We did it. He was like, well, that's that. We're done. That's it. Perfect. And the next time I heard it, the record company sent me the vinyl, and I listened back to Doctor Who, and it's always been in this house. My mum and my dad. It was such a prime time Saturday evenings viewing. And then you hear, do-wee-oo, And I played trad grip for the whole thing. I had a little blister on my thing because he wanted rods and trad grip like super soft. And what a privilege. I mean, I've done some crazy stuff for him. I've done not just the Doctor Who stuff, but he does a lot of cult stuff. Like I did the whole, the last series of Toast of Tinseltown, which that has an amazing, Toast has the most ridiculous cult following all over the world now. And I'm like his drum, I was going to say something rude then, but he basically, when he needs a drummer, he calls me, he's like, get over here and do this for me. And it's like, I know it's always going to be something wacky. I know it's always going to be underprepared. I know I'll just be sat at the kit writing notes and he'll go, right, we need it now, go. And we play. And we've done 3 albums together now. So
awesome.
It's great.
That's great. Before we go, I have 2 questions related to working with Steve Hackett, and then a drum geek question, and then it's going to be the Craig Blundell fun fact session questions.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
First, how did you get the gig with Steve?
I was on tour. I was on the To the Bone tour with Stephen Wilson, and that tour was coming to an end. And I got a message off my friend saying, Hackett's looking for another drummer. Your name's come up like 3 or 4 times. Would you be interested? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. You know, what? I know his work inside out. Obviously, I know his previous boy band he was in. I know all that as well.
I love it.
He rang me. We had a chat. We met up for a cup of tea, and then I was in rehearsals. That was it. It wasn't an audition or anything. It was done. And his band at the time, I kind of knew something like Jonas Reingold, monster bass player, played with the Flower Kings and all that sort of stuff. He was insane. Rob Townsend, the sax player, played with James Taylor, and then Roger had been his stalwart right-hand man MD for years. So I kind of knew the guys around the prog circuit because, you know, it's not that big, as you know, so names travel quick. And I found myself in a week and a half rehearsals getting ready for Selling England by the Pound. And
wow.
and that was, it was almost surreal. Like from that, where you go to the Ultimate Tech show with Stephen with all the 3D gauze and everything, to this where it's like, wow, I'm really in these parts here. This is, you know, playing the parts of my youth, but with Steve going, listen, I don't want you to be a tribute drummer. You play Collins, you play John Shearer, you play Chester Thompson, you play Simon Phillips. You do what you want to do. Just doff your cap a little bit to the originals when you need to, but be yourself. And what a great opportunity that is. So I mean, that is it. So
what wonderful music to be playing too. Just
I mean, really, are you kidding me? It's nostalgia that you know I grew up with. Of course, I grew up with it. Listened to it forever. And Phil, I actually discovered Phil when he was in Brand X, and then I went back and did all the Genesis stuff.
Interesting.
So Moroccan Roll was my first taste of Phil. Listening to that album, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And then I was growing up, and then went back to the Genesis stuff, and then forward to the Genesis stuff, and then got into Phil's more works, which led me down the jazz fusion path and Bruford and One of a Kind and all that sort of side. So I got my jazz fusion prog head on through that, really. So what a privilege. And that's all I can really say, really. What a privilege. So, and the man, as you'll see tomorrow, he's a gentleman. He's a gentleman. Great. He really is.
So what is your favorite song that you look forward to playing the most in the show? Wow, do you have a favorite? Question. I know it's like picking favorite children because you love them all. And I definitely have my favorites. I like songs personally that I know that could fall apart at any second. I love that. I love the chaosness of the fact that it's like, oh, is this going to stop? Is it what? So I love the 8/7 section, the 7/8 section, which 13 in Robbery, Assault and Battery. I love that. Nice. I love, because if you listen to the live, it took me ages to listen to the live tapes. And the breaks, they kind of shoehorn the breaks so they're not in 13. They're like 12 and a half. And it's like, ga. Right. It's like, what is going on here? Yes. What is going on? They're trying to work out, do you want it in 12 and a half? Do you want it modulating through it? So I love Robbery, Assault and Battery because you can have a little bit of fun. Of course, the 9/8 section in Supper's Ready Now, where I'm trying to basically make Roger make mistakes. I'm playing 7 through it, playing 13s through it, just having fun with it. And a lot of that, would you agree that a lot of that, you, at least for me, but what do I know? You're not counting that part out. You feel it, and you either get it or you don't, right? With both of those examples.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. See, when I was charting this out and learning it, like, because I'd listened to it back in the day, but listening to it is not learning it, is it? You know,
Right.
You have to digest it. It has to come out the pores, you know. So when you listen to it, you realize that Tony's playing his keyboard solo throughout that, it's just in 4/4. The whole thing's in 4/4. And the band are in 9 across it. And when you learn that, you almost have to undo it and start again, because you're like, wait, what were they listening to? What were they drinking, or what were they smoking at the time? And age 23, 24, 25, whatever. It's just like...
And The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I mean, one of the most intriguing epics ever. I can't wait to ask him about that whole experience. It's like,
insane.
Yeah.
You know, and the solo on Firth the Fifth and the whole kind of stabs at the front end of that. It's like, that is... I love music and I love drummers that are pioneering. You know, I don't have many favorite drummers. The ones I do have, no fluke, that they're pioneers. They're pioneers of the instrument. They're forward-thinking drummers that still to this day, you put them on. Neil, classic example. It still sounds as current, as beautiful as it did 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And you know, you listen to Selling England, or you listen to Seconds Out with Chester as well. The whole thing sounds... You couldn't get anybody getting any. It's like anyone getting close to that stuff.
Yeah, Bill's a great example too, because there is no drummer. Bless his heart, Terry Bozzio, who took over in UK. There is no drummer that sounds like Bill Bruford. There just isn't. His
Bill
drum
Bruford, Tony Williams.
Right, or Tony Williams. Yeah. There's no one that's really even said, "I'm not emulating that."
No,
right?
No, Bill. Bruford, and consistently over the years evolved musically as well. I mean, I saw him on one of his last drum shows, mid 2000s. Let's say, I'll give it a say, 2006, and I think it was the London or the UK drum show. He was on this beautiful Tama. Everything was low. There was 2 toms over here, 2 toms over there, a little ride, and he had this wonderful thing, Bill, where
hi-hat in the middle on that kit, right? The hi-hat was in the middle on that kit.
Yes, yeah. He would have this thing, and goes back to Craig's question about what I'm working on. He would have this thing where he'd sit down and look like he just can't be asked to play drums. He's just so like, whatever, whatever, blah, blah.
You're right.
And man, the stuff he churns out is superhuman.
Yeah.
You know, older than everyone else, been around the block, not hitting massively hard, just slaying it.
Right.
That tuning of the snare drum. He always had one of the most consistent snare tunings ever.
Yeah.
Ever on. Just like, there's Bill. There he is. That's Bill.
Yeah, exactly.
There he is.
Chris Squire says that it's Bill's snare drum tuning that defined his Rickenbacker sound. And, and vice versa. Bill said Chris's bass was so high EQ'd, he had to come up with something that would just cut through that,
There it is. I mean, that's it. And I mean, I sound like an old fuddy-duddy now. Like, you tell the kids of that, it's like, right, first thing you need to work on, posture, forget the chops, work on your sound, work on your tuning, get the right tuning that are going to make your drums pop. And Bruford's the king of that. Tony Williams, the king of that. Neil Peart, the king of that. Gavin, Simon, those guys. It's like, there it is. That's how you sound like you and make those drums pop, So love it. Love that.
Awesome. One more drum geek question, and then the Craig Blundell fun fact questions. I accidentally came across some photos of you in drum corps. And my question is, what was that experience like, and how much did those learnings carry over to the drum kit?
Experience was incredible. Nothing that would ever change. I was in the military. I was a Marine. Nothing that I would ever change. And I was 16 when I joined. I left this house as a young, spotty teenager and learned my trade, learned all the grips, did the military thing first as well. And to this day, every time I go to work, it's still there. It's still there. It makes me practice smarter, not longer. It makes me think smarter. I don't say I'm any wiser, but I'm really into practicing smart, not putting hours and hours and hours in. And because I just think you can my own personal opinion, you can over practice, and you can start off energized, and then by the end of the day, you've diluted the system and you feel run down. Short, sharp bursts of energy where you're getting the right things and practicing the right things and then keep that practice diary and keep progressing. And it's been the key for me, for sure. Write everything down. Every time I pick up a pair of sticks, write it down, diarize it. So when you're having a little crappy day, go back and say, right, okay, I was playing that at 160, so it must be just fatigue, rather than letting this go down a path that you don't want to go, let it go down. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that wisdom. Yeah, thanks for sharing that wisdom. And even though it's different countries, thank you for serving. That comes with the caveat that I'm glad it was before July. It wasn't before July 1776. So thank you for serving.
Yes. My pleasure.
All right.
It's something, I go back to the Marines once or twice a year, and I go mentor them. So I go back to the School of Music. I'm still a guest down there, and I still do my little professor role down there, and I work with the guys every year. And
there are some awesome military bands around the world. There really are. Whether they're playing traditional marching type music, drum corps, or corps music, or big band swing. There's some great stuff out there. I've met many drummers that
hands for days. Hands for days. Yeah. For sure.
So now we're going to continue our last segment before we go, so that we can cut it under an hour, make sure this fits on Instagram, or Steve will yell at me, with the Craig Blundell fun fact question. I'll throw out a few. Steve will throw out a couple. Just answer as quickly as you can.
Okay.
And here we go. Ready? Favorite movie?
Jackie Brown Today.
Okay. Favorite place on a tour itinerary that you look forward to because of the food?
Japan.
My favorite as well. Best food on the planet. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Cool. Paper or plastic?
Paper.
Coffee or tea?
I'm allergic to caffeine, so I'm in a whole world of pain. You can get better decaffeinated tea from me personally.
Great. And favorite TV show?
I'm going to say Toast. I'm obsessed with it. Even he's my friend.
Okay. And you've been pretty much around the world. Where have you not been that you would like to go? Whether it's on tour, holiday, whatever, where have you not been that is on your bucket list?
I have not been to Hong Kong. I'd quite like to go to Hong Kong. I've flown through South Africa. But I've done most countries. What a privilege. I've done most ones I ever wanted to be in, I think, really. Yeah. I never get tired of New Zealand. I would love to keep going back to New Zealand. It's amazing.
Cool. And before I hand it to Steve, I noticed there's a tattoo on your wrist. It looks like it might be a sun. Do you want to show that and talk about what that is?
That was that was a mixture of being very young and very stupid. That's it. Okay. That's it, kids.
You don't want to elaborate on what it is or what it represents?
No, nothing. I'm like, oh, that looks shiny. Put it on. Done. Yeah. I would love to say it's a lovely, deep spiritual meaning, but young, stupid. Yeah.
That's funny. I got my tattoo at, I think I was 42, and I noticed yours because I have a son. And I drew beautiful. Mine, actually. I drew all of that. And I got it later in life, and I thought, what could I get that I'll never grow out of? And since I was a little boy, I was always fascinated with the smiling sun symbol, and I thought, well, that's beautiful. Positive. I don't think I'll grow out of that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Cool. Steve, fun fact questions for Craig?
Yeah. Spring or autumn?
Spring.
Sourdough, wheat bread, or white bread?
Oh, sourdough, without question.
Okay, favorite beverage?
I'm going to say water.
Ooh. Okay.
What a boring geek, right? I know.
Water's important.
Yeah, I've been drinking more of it because it's like summertime and it's excruciatingly hot. So yeah.
Electrolytes. I'm of an age now where I get cramp just getting out of bed, so water is good for me.
Yeah, my cramps are usually from the neck up. I actually, I make a blend about, checking the time, 3 or 4 times a day of this stuff out here. Maybe they have it there by Celestial Seasons called Tension Tamer Tea. And I make a big batch of it. I refrigerate it. And then I mix it with something called Amino Energy, which is orange flavored electrolytes and amino acids, and that's my pick me up and hydration.
Man, you got to have it. One thing I've learned now, playing these shows, playing 3 hours a night. The next day, I creak more than the chair I'm sat in. So I have to go. I've got so many creams and ailment stuff that I have to. Otherwise, I'm literally like an old guy, just like I can't lift my head. So,
that's so funny. Here's the album. You can get the album, folks. Steve Hackett, Genesis Revisited, Seconds Out, and more. Craig does a phenomenal job. Inside Out Music was kind enough to send Steve and I a digital copy. We've listened to it. The production, the sound, as Craig talked about.
It's amazing.
It's a nice really
mix.
Thank you. I've not heard it yet, so I'm glad you guys have heard it. It's amazing.
And it's the performance is impeccable. And I want to close with a little bit more of that performance I showed earlier. Stay on the line till after I disconnect. Folks, here you go. And join us tomorrow if you're watching this today, Monday, the 8th. Join us for Steve Hackett. Here we go. Let's go jump ahead to here. Join us Tuesday, folks, August 9th, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern U.S. times, and 3 p.m. UK when we are joined by that guy, Steve Hackett.